Imagine being born into poverty, expected to follow a simple life on a farm. But instead of accepting fate, you dare to dream bigger, so big that your ideas end up transforming the world forever. This is the story of a boy who defied all odds, built a billion-dollar empire, and changed the way we live today. This is the story of Henry Ford. Henry Ford was born in 1863 on a small farm in Greenfield Township, Michigan. Life was simple but tough. His father, William Ford, worked tirelessly on the land, believing that farming was the only path to survival. And like most fathers of that era, he expected his son to follow in his footsteps. But Henry was different. From an early age, he showed no interest in the endless cycle of planting, harvesting, and tending to livestock. While other children ran through the fields, Henry spent his time taking apart clocks, watches, and anything mechanical he could get his hands on. He wasn't just playing, he was learning. One day, at just 12 years old, Henry had an encounter that would change his life forever. A steam-powered machine rolled into his village, loud, powerful, and unlike anything he had ever seen before. He stood there, eyes wide, watching the massive engine work effortlessly, doing the job of many men. That moment planted a seed in his mind. Machines were the future, and he wanted to be a part of it. But at the time, dreaming of machines wasn't practical. His father wanted him to be a farmer, and that was that. Still, Henry's fascination only grew. He started sneaking away from the farm to visit a small machine shop in town. There, he met mechanics who introduced him to tools and engines, showing him how they worked. He was just a boy, but in his heart, he knew his destiny wasn't on a farm. It was with machines. At the age of 16, Henry made a bold decision, one that went against everything his family believed in. He packed a small bag, left his home, and moved to Detroit to chase his dream of working with machines. Detroit, in the late 1800s, was a growing industrial city. It was loud, crowded, and filled with factories, each one producing steam engines, metalworks, and other mechanical wonders. For Henry, it was like stepping into a new world. He found a job as an apprentice machinist, working in a factory that built steam engines. The pay was barely enough to survive. He lived in cramped rooms, often skipping meals just to make ends meet. But he didn't complain. Why? Because every day he was learning. He worked long, grueling hours, his hands constantly covered in oil and grease. And when the factory doors closed at night, he didn't go home. He stayed behind, studying blueprints, learning how machines were built from the inside out. He wasn't just a worker. He was a student of industry. For the next 12 years, Henry worked in various mechanical shops, perfecting his craft. While other men worked to earn a paycheck, Henry worked to gain knowledge. And soon, that knowledge would change everything. In 1891, Henry Ford got a job at the Edison Illuminating Company as an engineer. It was here that he got his first real break. Working with electricity was exciting, but Henry's passion lay elsewhere, in engines and transportation. At night, he worked on his own projects, designing a gasoline-powered vehicle in a small wooden shed behind his house. He had a vision, a horseless carriage that could transport people without the need for railroads or animals. And then, something incredible happened. One evening, Henry had the chance to meet the great Thomas Edison himself. Nervous but excited, Henry explained his idea for an automobile. Edison listened carefully, and then, with a spark in his eye, he leaned forward and said, "Young man, keep at it." That was all Henry needed to hear. Encouraged by Edison's words, he worked day and night, pouring his heart into his creation. And finally, in 1896, he built his first gasoline-powered vehicle, the quadricycle. It was small, fragile, and far from perfect, but it worked. And more importantly, it proved that automobiles could be the future. Excited by his success, Henry tried to turn his invention into a business. But he faced a harsh reality. Investors weren't interested. The automobile was still seen as a luxury, a novelty for the rich. Henry wasn't discouraged. He kept improving his designs, determined to make cars accessible to everyone. In 1903, after years of struggle, he finally secured funding and founded Ford Motor Company. But even then, things weren't easy. The early investors wanted him to build luxury cars for the wealthy. Henry refused. He had a different vision. He wanted to create a car that was affordable for the average American. And in 1908, he did just that. He introduced the Model T, a simple, durable, and low-cost automobile. It sold for $850, much cheaper than any other car on the market. Suddenly, everyone, farmers, teachers, and factory workers, could dream of owning a car. The Model T was a massive success. Orders flooded in, and Ford's factories struggled to keep up. But Henry wasn't done innovating. He wanted to make production faster. And so, in 1913, he introduced something that would change the world forever: the moving assembly line. This revolutionary idea cut production time from 12 hours per car to just 90 minutes. The cost of the Model T dropped even further, and by 1927, Ford had sold over 15 million cars, making it the best-selling vehicle of its time. But Henry Ford didn't just change the automobile industry. He also changed the way companies treated their workers. In 1914, he shocked the world by introducing a $5 a day wage, more than double what the average factory worker earned. People thought he was crazy, but Ford knew something they didn't. If workers made more money, they could afford to buy the cars they built. It was a win-win strategy, and it set a new standard for labor across industries. This move turned Ford factories into the most desirable workplaces in the country. Thousands of people applied for jobs, and productivity skyrocketed. Of course, success came with its challenges. Ford faced intense competition from General Motors and Chrysler. The Great Depression tested the limits of his empire. But by the time Henry Ford passed away in 1947, he had forever changed the world. He started as a poor farm boy, but through relentless hard work, innovation, and an unshakable belief in his vision, he built a billion-dollar empire. He didn't just make cars. He transformed entire industries. He reshaped modern business. And today, his legacy lives on in every assembly line, every affordable car, and every entrepreneur who dares to dream big. Henry Ford proved that success isn't about where you start. It's about how far you're willing to go. So, what's stopping you from chasing your dreams? If you found this story inspiring, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories of the world's greatest millionaires. Until next time, keep pushing forward.